Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. You are listening to a rebroadcast of a previously recorded show.
We're live at the Miami Book Fair, powered by Life Improvement Radio. You can go to my website, neilhaley.com, tollsir.net, all those different places. And now we are going to welcome the co-host that started it all with me in Miami, Eric Remmel, owner of Life Improvement Radio. How are you, Eric? And I'm so glad that you joined us today.
I'm great, Neil. How are you?
Fantastic. We've had some interesting authors, a lot of interesting fillers, and for the final 2 hours, we're going to have a lot of great times. And we have a great helper this year, somebody different, and she's doing a fantastic job. So, Eric, tomorrow I'll have you on the group text for that when you're manning the whole thing with me, because we're going to have some fun tomorrow as well. So, but I also want to welcome my co-host, Peter Elvidge. Peter, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How you guys doing?
Doing great. And
Doing
I
great,
know
thank you.
that my producers informed me our guest is on the line, so let's just get to it. And if I'm looking at, I'm excited to welcome from him author Ross King. Ross,
Hello.
how are you?
Very well. Great to be here.
Oh, it's fantastic to chat with you. Can you tell us a little bit of your background? And we have a panel of people to ask questions to you. So you're going to have an interesting interview. Go ahead with your
All right,
background,
great.
Ross.
So I'm getting interviewed in the next hour by my boss, my editor and publisher, and so this will be a good warm up, having a triumvirate quizzing me.
Okay.
Just a bit about me. I grew up in Canada. I've lived in England for 25 years, and I write about art, architectural history. I write about artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo. I've written about Machiavelli, and now I've written about Claude Monet, which is what my most recent book is on. And I suppose the reason I'm here to talk to you.
Awesome. We'll start. Who wants first?
All right.
Question. Eric, you have a question? Or first go Peter?
Oh, okay. So I've been looking at some of your work, and I'm looking for more description on it as to what you're trying to put out there for like a story or for a connection to yourself.
Well, what I try to do in all of my books is to drill down very deeply into the lives and times of the people who create what we now, centuries later, regard as masterpieces, whether it's Leonardo da Vinci painting The Last Supper, or Michelangelo doing the vault of the Sistine Chapel, or Claude Monet painting the water lilies. What I write are not straightforward biographies of these artists. What I do is take a crucial 5, 6, 7, or in the case of Monet, 12 years in their life, which were vital for them because it's the years in which they created their masterpieces. And what I try to do is re-engineer the work of art and go back to the very beginning. So go back to, for example, 1914, June of 1914, when Claude Monet comes out of retirement. He'd retired a couple of years earlier because of problems with his eyes, because of depression, grief over the death of his wife, and suddenly begins painting his massive water lily canvases, which are 6.5 feet high by 14 feet wide, 20 feet wide, 42 feet wide.
Awesome.
And sort of just don't take for granted that these things were going to be masterpieces, and look at all of the difficulties that the painter had in trying to achieve this monumental ambition that he had.
Gotcha.
And so I'm trying to put the history into art history and really tell it as a narrative, tell it as a story that I think everything I tell is true, but I think I hope I make it interesting because of the fact that I include all of the drama and all of the things that worked against the painters as they were working.
Gotcha. All right.
Ross, I know there's probably a lot of work and research that goes into these projects. What's it like prepping for the research for this book? Do you find yourself traveling around the world and immersing yourself in museums, or doing a lot of research online? What's that process like?
I do all of the above, and the most fun part, obviously, is the travel. And my accountant has said, now remember that this is work-related travel, so you can claim this as an expense, which is nice to know that I can write off a trip to Paris and things like that. One of the things I want to do is have boots on the ground research where I walk around the garden in Giverny that outside of Paris that Claude Monet painted, or I take the walk in Rome that Michelangelo took every day as he went from his studio to the Sistine Chapel to do his painting, to try to immerse myself in their lives in a particular time. Because what I try to do is maybe a kind of literary time travel and take myself back and also my readers back into that time. The other thing is the paper research, and in many of my books I've used archives. I've gone into archives, looked at letters and things like that, looked at older documents. And then the third resource is the internet, which you have to be extremely distrustful of because of the fact that there is a lot of information on it that hasn't been fact-checked and hasn't been curated, but it is still a great resource. And for me, writing about Claude Monet in Mad Enchantment, I was able to summon up onto my computer French newspapers from the 1890s, early 1900s with their feature articles on Claude Monet. 10 years ago, I would have had to go to Paris, go into the Bibliothèque Nationale, the National Library in Paris, climb all of the stairs, summon up the material, and then squint over it. But now, in the comfort of my own office, I was able to read these ancient newspapers, these newspapers that are 100 years old. And so I'm very thankful for the internet for giving me that possibility, and for Gallico, this great website of the Bibliothèque Nationale.
That's incredible. That
Wow.
was my curiosity, was what it would be like to immerse yourself in these times that occurred thousands of years ago. So many things have changed since these paintings existed or were created. So that's just interesting to hear how you put yourself in that mindset to do the research and create the content for the novel.
Yeah, and I do try to take myself back to that period. And one of the crucial things I do when I write is I never look forward. And so if I'm writing about Leonardo painting The Last Supper, which is my next to last book, I never begin the book by telling you that he finishes it. And I was recently paid a compliment by someone I met recently who said that she had a view of the dome in Florence. I wrote a book called Brunelleschi's Dome about the construction of the dome in 15th century Florence, and she said from her hotel she could see the dome, but as she was reading the book, she was able to put out of her mind the fact that it was actually finished because of the fact that the book sort of took her through all of the difficulties in the construction of it. And so I never give away the ending, and I never prejudge things that happen. I tell things in the order that they happen, which I think leads to a lot of drama and excitement.
Oh, wow.
Gotcha.
What I like the connection that you're taking art, which is complex at times, especially
Right.
for me who really doesn't have a historical, I have a degree in history, but really didn't study art history. And for you to can make those connections that will make art more enjoyable for people that are not art connoisseurs. And I think that's probably one of your reasons for writing like this, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. I'm writing art history for people I'm writing history for people who possibly don't know they're interested in art. Because what all art is, and architecture as well, sculpture, all of that is a reflection of the society that it comes out of. And so in order to understand that society, you have to understand the cultural products of it, the works of art that were painted in that particular time, the buildings that were constructed. And so, someone told me one time that all of my books have an explosion in them. And I think I was told that after 3 or 4 books, and I've now done, I think, 9 or 10, something like that, and they still have explosions in them because art is caught up in society, and society is often caught up in war, and therefore art becomes a part of war. And there were lots of explosions in Mad Enchantment because Monet began painting his large water lilies in 1914, which of course is when World War I broke out, and he could literally hear Paris being bombed from his garden in Giverny, some 40-odd miles away. And so all of these things factor into into the work of art. You can't create a work of art in a vacuum. So what I try to do is to give it context and bring in all of the personalities involved, and to bring in all of the historical events and the social events that had some sort of a bearing on the work of art that was being created.
Gotcha. So I'm just curious, when like creating the book and cultivating all the research and the different things you wanted to put in there, I know that there's probably something that didn't make it into the book that you wanted in there. What didn't make the cut that was something that, you wanted to put in there, but you either didn't feel like, it would work with the connections that you'd had made the book, or the research that you've done, or,
very good question. Yeah. And I mean, there are probably a lot of things that, the interesting factoids that I couldn't quite shoehorn in. One of the things that was in that I took out at the suggestion of a couple of people, I now wish I had kept in, which is a description of someone who, a very good friend of Claude Monet, who came to see him in 1915, and who then wrote a newspaper article describing the difference between Monet's garden and the Western Front, and saying that all of those devastated villages on the Western Front were as beautiful as Giverny. And I was actually going to put, one of the reasons why I took it out is I was going to put it in a different article, which I never, alas, got around to writing. But it was from a writer named Octave Mirbeau, who was probably Claude Monet's closest friend. And I just found it fascinating that he made that link between Monet's garden in 1915 and the devastation of the Western Front, and the fact that the beautiful landscapes of eastern France were being destroyed. And fortunately, in 1915, Monet's garden was in some peril because the Germans could have taken Paris. That was always a possibility in the course of the First World War. And if Paris fell, Giverny would have. And so I sort of now regret that no one has read this article since 1915, and I had sort of resurrected it and was going to use it, and then for a variety of reasons didn't get to do so.
Gotcha. All right.
But my editor's usually pretty good about keeping me on track in making sure that everything is relevant, and I'm not just putting in funny stories for the sake of funny stories, that when I have my anecdotes, they are relevant. They have some sort of a bearing on the story.
All right, Ross, best place we can find information on you, purchase your book, and learn more about you. Where can we go?
You can go to roskingbooks.com, which is my website, which has all the information on all of my books, but also a big standalone page on Mad Enchantment, which is the new one that just came out in September. So roskingbooks.com.
All right. Well, thanks for calling. Enjoyed the talking to you, and hopefully we prepared you for your next interview. So
yes. Well, great questions. Thanks very much. Pleasure talking to all of you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own and shall not be construed in any way as advice from Life Improvement Radio. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our website. Personal perspectives expressed by the producers, writers, or editors will always be presented as such. Any rebroadcast or retransmission without the expressed written consent of Life Improvement Radio is strictly prohibited. Thanks for listening.